The clang of steel bars, the echo of boots down a prison hallway, and in the middle of it all, a boy. Not a hardened criminal, not a man, just a boy. David Allan Coe's life of tragedy began here, locked up before he even understood what freedom meant. Prison was not just his punishment, it was his upbringing. Welcome to Back of the Day, where we uncover the untold truths of legends who carried scars the world never saw. David's scars began long before the spotlight. Born into poverty, abandoned by those who should have protected him, he never had a place to truly call home. By the time other children were learning in classrooms, he was learning survival behind bars. The system became his parent, and prison became his school. Every song he would one day write, every outlaw lyric he would one day sing, it was born from the tragedy of those first cold, lonely nights in a cell. Prison was not just walls and iron for David Allan Coe, it was survival of the fittest. Inside, every day was a test of strength, of courage, of whether he could simply make it to the next sunrise. He was still just a teenager, but the system treated him like a man. Violence was constant. Threats never ended. To survive, David had to harden his heart. He had to become the outlaw the world would one day know him as. But even in that darkness, something unexpected was born. He found rhythm in the silence, words in the pain, and music in the echoes of those cold cells. While others plotted escape with weapons, David escaped with songs. He began writing down stories about betrayal, about loneliness, about the cruelty of life. He sang them to himself at night, whispering through the bars, as if music was the only proof he still had a soul. And that soul, broken, scarred, but unshaken, would one day step out of those gates and into the world, carrying the weight of every night behind bars. When the prison gates finally opened, David Allan Coe didn't step into freedom. He stepped into a world that already judged him. A boy who grew up behind bars was now a man carrying the label of convict. Society didn't forgive, but David had found something no one could take away: his music. With a battered guitar and a voice soaked in pain, he began performing on the streets, in bars, anywhere someone would listen. His songs weren't polished, they weren't pretty, they were raw, they were real. And people listening in Nashville, the music industry, didn't know what to do with him. He was too wild, too rough, too honest. But that honesty made him unforgettable. He sang of prison walls, of broken hearts, of life on the edge. He wasn't just another singer. He was the outlaw who lived what he sang by the 1970s. David Allan Coe became part of the outlaw country movement, standing beside legends like Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Johnny Cash. His ballads cut deep, his anthems electrified crowds, and his reputation as a rebel only grew. But behind every lyric was a scar. Behind every standing ovation was a man still chained to the tragedies of his past. Fame had found him, but so had the ghosts of the prison walls. For most people, love is an escape, a safe place. But for David Allan Coe, love often became another battlefield. His rough upbringing left him hungry for connection, desperate to build a family that he had never truly known. He married more than once, hoping to find stability, but each time, heartbreak followed. Failed relationships left deep scars, and the weight of fame only added to the cracks in his personal life. David's children, too, lived under the shadow of his outlaw persona. The long tours, the wild lifestyle, and the chaos of his reputation often made it difficult for him to be fully present. While the world knew him as a rebel star, his family knew a man wrestling with demons far larger than himself. Every song about heartbreak wasn't just poetry, it was his truth. Every line about love and loss was carved from the wounds of his own life. In the spotlight, fans saw the outlaw. At home, his loved ones saw the man, fragile, scarred, and still searching for the family he had lost, and that search would collide with something even heavier, the relentless eye of the public. Fame had given him a stage, but it also stripped away his privacy. With his outlaw reputation, David Allan Coe was never just a country singer. He was a lightning rod, praised by some as a fearless truth-teller, condemned by others as dangerous and offensive. The media called him unpredictable, critics labeled him controversial, and even within the music industry, he was often an outsider. His songs, raw and unfiltered, touched on subjects many artists were too afraid to sing about. But that honesty came with a price. Radio stations banned his music. Journalists tore apart his lyrics. Some branded him as nothing more than a shock act, ignoring the pain and reality behind his words. And while the world debated his image, David struggled with the weight of it all. The boy who once just wanted to be heard was now trapped inside the role of the outlaw, a role that sold records, but also chained him to constant judgment. The spotlight was bright, but it was also harsh. Every move, every lyric, every mistake, magnified and scrutinized. And behind the rebel facade, the man himself was breaking. The fame that promised freedom only tightened the chains he thought he had escaped from. Fame is often painted as a reward, wealth, glory, and comfort. But for David Allan Coe, the truth was far more painful. Years on the road drained him. The outlaw image kept him in demand, but it also kept him trapped in a cycle of financial instability. Despite his hits, despite the crowds, David often struggled with poverty. Bad deals, reckless spending, and the weight of his past mistakes followed him like shadows he could never outrun. And then came his health. Years of living hard took their toll. As he grew older, the man who once roared on stage with unstoppable energy found himself battling the frailties of age. Hospital visits replaced concerts, and physical pain began to silence the very voice that had carried him through life. Emotionally, the scars of his childhood, his failed marriages, and the endless criticism weighed heavily. He had built an outlaw legacy, but behind it stood a man exhausted, fragile, and still searching for peace. The same fire that made him a legend was now burning him from the inside. Every legend leaves behind more than just their name. They leave behind echoes. For David Allan Coe, those echoes live in his music. His songs weren't polished tales of perfect love or easy living. They were jagged, broken, and real, just like the man who wrote them. From the prison walls that first inspired him to the heartbreaks that tore his soul apart, every lyric carried the weight of his tragedy. Coe's music spoke to those who felt forgotten, rejected, or lost. The outlaws, the broken, the dreamers who lived on the edge, they saw themselves in his words. That was his gift. He gave a voice to people who rarely had one. Even as controversies followed him, even as critics tried to silence him, his songs endured. Because pain is timeless. And when pain is put into music, it becomes truth. David Allan Coe's legacy is not just in outlaw country. It is in proving that the darkest struggles can create. It began with the slam of a prison door, a boy condemned before he had the chance to live. And in many ways, David Allan Coe never truly left that cell. The scars of abandonment, the lessons of survival, the ghosts of loneliness, they followed him through every stage, every song, every heartbreak. Fame gave him a stage, but it never gave him peace. Love touched his life, but loss was never far behind. Even as crowds cheered his outlaw anthems, inside he remained that broken boy, still say. His story is not just music history, it is a human tragedy. A reminder that behind every legend, behind every rebel, there is a soul shaped by pain. David Allan Coe lived hard, sang harder, and carried scars the world could hear but never see. And as his songs echo through time, one truth remains: some chains are never broken,